I'm titling this series A Gangstalking Story, but really it's my gangstalking story, my personal story, and experience with it. Before I get into it, I do want to say for anyone out there listening and experiencing this type of attack that I don't use the term gang stalking. It is a charged term that law enforcement or anyone you might, try and get help from would use to dismiss it. Now, that's pretty interesting that that's the case because, when you hear some of the stories that people experiencing this describe, the only way this kind of coordination, these types of activities could be possible plausibly is with the help of law enforcement or law enforcement itself, which happens to be the case in my story. All right. So now, this series, I'm imagining it right now, it's going to be about 24 episodes, 3 seasons, um, 8 episodes a season, something like that is how I'm imagining it. But it can be something that goes a lot longer than that. Because what I'm describing is a situation that spans about 14 years. Yeah, I believe it began about 14 years ago. And I believe it's because of my work as a journalist, covering Haitian politics and news. I could see how, some of the people that I had the opportunity to meet during that time and, you know, writing about corruption and writing about, exploitation by imperialist powers on the tiny island nation of Haiti. I believe those types of things probably drew some attention. And early on, for about the first 2 years, I would say, well, here's what it is. For some reason, they want you to know that you're under surveillance and that they're watching you, which is it sounds counterintuitive, and it is. Because if you really suspected someone of being involved in, any kind of crime or whatever, like, I mean, letting them know that you're watching um, doesn't make much sense, but what I've come to understand, well, I have different theories about it, but it could be an intimidation tactic. That's what I believed it was, you know, I mean, different times I wonder what it is. Perhaps that's an intimidation tactic. Perhaps it's something to, keep me in line, because I'm a pretty bad dude. Like, really, you got to find out. Or what? I also think it could be frustration. Imagine, you sign up to be a Fed, you're thinking you're taking down like, some real bad guys, but really you're out here doing political work for, you know, uh, Epstein's friends. You're doing political work for these guys. So it could be frustration or whatever, but that's what they do. And early on, and if somebody were to come to me and tell me, yo, those first 2, 3 years, that was just all coincidence, I'll accept it. Because it is whatever. But you know, in light of everything that's happened over the full span, even unto this day, um, I have to look at this as being something that, again, as far back as that. And it went through phases, and then it went through from what appeared as periodic scanning, and I determined this by the information that they were demonstrating that they had, and from what I thought would be a bit more, higher priority on the list as far as information. So, you could kind of gauge, um, the kind of resources that are being put against you. But from there it went to like, wiretapping, where, it's voice conversations, even where there's an expectation of privacy, you know. And then you can see, okay, things are kind of ratcheting up, you know. And, I use the term, I did say that intimidation could be a reason, but then sometimes, maybe they want to really try to get you to pop off, like that could be it, oh, this guy hasn't popped off yet, and he hasn't, wild out, because we're in his devices, and we're, checking up on him. So let's turn it up a little bit. But then we went into a phase where, okay, let's play a game then. And what it appears to be is that they took it the way I meant it to be taken, and they really decided to ratchet it up. And then we got into violence, we got into threats, we got into the involvement of more people. People you who's listening to me right now might even know, or thought you know and trust. Like, this is where it's gone. And all this even ultimately came to the death of a woman who was shot in 2023, January, over this criminal gang stalking behavior, these activities. So this has been a pretty long saga. I'm going to have evidence, uh, pictures, communications with law enforcement. Um, but it is going to be sparse. I think over time I could, I'll have to go out and collect it, because at the time, like, while these things, well, we'll get to that later. Uh, Rather, let me just talk about two things about me. That two things you should know about me. Number one, I am a high IQ individual. Um, among the highest IQ on the planet, top 2%. This is, I tested to have to be two standard deviations above the mean. Like, I'm a member of American Mensa, which is for people who test at that level of intelligence. Okay, now that doesn't mean I know everything. Like, some people, like, they hear high IQ and they think it means you know everything. It doesn't mean I know everything. Really, really doesn't mean that. Like, I'd have to kind of be interested in something to care to want to know about it. But, you know, one of the gifts of it, I should say, is to want to know a lot of things. Um, but in fact, I could even be slow. At the end of the day, being that far off the mean uh, is is neurodivergence, and there's just going to be some things that you're going to be slow about. For me, it was sarcasm early. Like, it was very hard for me to catch sarcasm. Small talk, small talk, very difficult. Things I had to really, really work on. The colloquialisms of neurotypical relations, or those nuances of human interaction. I could be slow. High IQ does have staggered, what they call staggered development. Is actually a very big part of it. So it comes with its difficulties. I can still be taken by the whims of fate, the wiles of fate, I would say. Like, I don't want people to think that it's necessary. It's a superpower. The one thing that tracks with intelligence is the ability to recognize patterns, and that makes me uniquely, like, out of all the people they could have chosen to run a gang stalking operation against, I'm definitely the wrong one, because my ability to recognize patterns and abstract those patterns. That's even further. That's. I'm gonna have to do a playlist just on high IQ. Like, if people really want to know, like, how my brain works, and or how I see things, or how I believe I see things differently than most people, and things like that. But there is that. The second thing I would also uh, put out front is that I'm also a software engineer. I work in IT, uh, developing websites, web applications, mobile applications. Like, this is how I make a living. So I have a certain understanding of the technologies that are out there, as well as cybersecurity. So that's like a double whammy of me being the wrong person to try to run these types of operations from. Because if it's somebody that doesn't really understand how algorithms work, or how an algorithm should work, and be able to determine that, hey, this is outside of what an algorithm with general user data should know. Like, because these things aren't magical for me. I work with them every day, essentially every day. So so yeah, that's it. And if I could add a triple whammy that just came to mind now, one thing about high IQ individuals is our resilience to what I would say, to being induced into psychosis. You know, like the type of harassment, the type of psychology operations they've tried to run these past 14 years would break a lot of people, you know. But one of the gifts of high IQ, and really what helps with pattern recognition at the end of the day, is the ability to detach, disassociate, um, and especially when it comes to one's feelings, one's emotions, one's thoughts. Like, so as a triple whammy, your psychological operations, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, outside of, like sticking a needle into somebody or energy weapons or something like that. Like if you're just cooking up some, some stuff, I'm kind of like the wrong one you want to mess with. So this has been a real FAFO situation, and the phase that we are in today, with these 14 years of harassment, is where they're running, hiding, because a woman's life was taken. A lot of crimes have been done. It's a complete injustice. And it appears to be political, moreover, political. Either political or just out of the fear of me. Like, I'm really that bad dude. And they're about to find out. So for these episodes, I'm gonna typically have a lot of information in the descriptions. A short summary, synopsis of what the episode was about, some stalking information, resources that people could use, and most importantly, I'm gonna drop the Zell. Now you could imagine, like, there has been definite attacks towards my livelihood, throughout this, and it's things we're going to get into in later episodes. So, and also it looks like I'm going to have to take these guys to court. I'm going to have to take. So, let me point the finger. Orange County, Florida Sheriff's Office. That's who I'm pointing the finger at for this. But yeah, like I'm going to likely have to take them to court over this. So any support you guys could give, that would be great. And is that all